Cool.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Patty McMahon. I'm the Outreach Director for the Jefferson County Libertarian Party, and with me is Ross.
Hi, I am Ross, with the chair of the Jefferson County Libertarian Party.
And this is our final Meet the Candidate series that we've been doing, but surprise, tonight we actually have a candidate. We couldn't be more excited. It's supposed to be fundraising, but in true libertarian fashion, nobody responded. But so we reached out and we got the candidate for the campaigns director, and that is Jacob Luria. Jacob, hi, Jacob.
Hi, how are you two?
We are wonderful. We are so excited to have you. And I just, we've been shouting out to you all week because Jacob Luria is from Jefferson County.
Yes.
Yes. So not surprising that you would show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you two, having me on to chat. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody. So.
Yeah, and we are really excited because we were in the pre-meeting, and I actually had to stop and say, wait, this is stuff we should be putting on the recording because this is very interesting stuff. So before we start our conversation, Ross, what does the campaign director do?
Well, the campaigns director, extremely important position, is in charge of shall identify political races and recruit candidates. The campaigns director also coordinates candidates and campaigns and assists candidates in navigating compliance with campaign legal requirements and obtaining campaign volunteers. The campaigns director may establish and manage committees, including appointment of any committee chair to perform these or other campaign functions. An extremely important position, especially this time of year. I mean,
right. And before we turn this over to Jacob, we just want to say that he is actually the current campaigns director and probably the hardest working person in the LPCO right now. I don't think anybody would dispute that. So Jacob, tell us, one, why you would possibly want to rerun for this position, and then tell us, what are you doing right now as the campaign director?
Sure. So your first question, the easy answer to that is, one, I would feel kind of guilty having just recruited a lot of candidates, especially some who haven't run for office before, but have the cojones enough to actually do it. It would seem a little, I don't know, not great to just say, hey guys, now that I've recruited you, I'm not rerunning, you're on your own, someone else will deal with it. But also it is definitely a position where you learn a lot, right? Like there are certain board positions maybe that can have a higher turnover rate. And I think fundraising is one of those ones where if someone does a great job one year, but can't do it, and someone else really is good that can step up, that's great. Campaigns for me, has been a little bit of a learning curve. I will say I'm kind of lucky that we're in Colorado. We have some of the friendliest minor and independent ballot access laws in the country. Campaign finance is definitely still a thing, though. That is something we always have to worry about. So, but I've learned a lot, and I would like to continue to build on that for sure. So part of what I have been doing so far, the main thing is trying to get as many candidates to run. So we will have about 40 to 50 candidates running. A majority need to be nominated. Some are local candidates that are nonpartisan. Those races also we're going to focus in a little bit more on. We have just better voting margins in some of those local races, like Aaron Lamb, for example. I feel bad. He's in Weld County. I don't think it's Greeley, but it's a town outside of Greeley. He's going to run for mayor in a race where the last mayor won with 200 votes. So there are targeted races here where we think we can do well. We also have some very serious candidates all up and down the ballot who are going to put in some serious races. And recently I have been contacted by a company called Good Party. They are an open source company. I guess the CEO is a cryptocurrency millionaire. I I don't know him. I've just met their spokesperson, but they are open source software that they are giving only to third party and independent candidates. They're not allowing Republicans and Democrats. And the simplest way I can describe it is it's just an endorsement site essentially, but you build it into your website. When you click on an endorse button or a donate button, it goes to this website essentially, and they can set parameters to who can endorse candidates. I think from what I understand. So like if you want to make sure that no one outside of Colorado endorses a candidate, you can do that so that let's say you knock on someone's door and they say, well, how many people are really supporting you? You can open up the site and say 200 people endorse me. And these are all people who live in Colorado, or these are all people who live in, you know, this part of Colorado. And they have sort of found that numbers, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like it's one thing to go and knock on a door and say, well, everyone I've talked to tonight really likes me. They'll probably vote for me. It's another thing to pull up a website and say, these 200 or 300 people have guaranteed that they endorse me and they will vote for me. And you don't know their party affiliation. It may not be all, and especially being third party or independent, very likely those endorsements are coming from people who may not be in your party. So, you know, there is a little bit of going to be a give and take with them. They only want candidates up to a certain level. Like we're probably not going to put our Senate candidate on there. They are looking for state and below. Part of the reason is obviously they're looking for wins. We're looking for wins. And so, you know, what they're hoping to build their success is that come this election season, they can say 10% of our candidates won their elections. And that will be, and then we as libertarians can take that and say, you know, now we have even better statistics on where our candidates did well, how many people supported them, and going into next election, like what we found is candidates usually run and say, wow, I never want to do that again. And then 6 months later, they fill out another run for office form. You know, like I'll give you an example. Brian Piotr ran in Broomfield for city council. He ran in a race with no Republican, got 40% of the vote, did much better than any Republican who ran, which shows me that people don't really like the Republicans. There's still a stigma around that. And I think libertarians can offer a lot of what people want in Colorado without that stigma attached. You know, we love the environment. We're not looking to pollute our lakes and rivers. Like Colorado has a long history of being a first state to do a lot of things, right? We gave women the right to vote before any state. We set up state parks before the National Park Service was around. We are the party that can lead Colorado toward the future with respecting a lot of the things that we like. And like Brian Rand was like, that was fun, but I lost. I don't want to do that again. And now he wants to run for US Senate, you know? So like, you know, it is its own weird addiction. Politics is its own weird addiction, honestly. Like that's, you know, a little bit why we do this. Like we all are nerds in our own way that we enjoy this. But I think that's a good thing. Like you're never going to have 100% of the population engaged in politics. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. You know, there are people I know who don't know anything about law, economics, voting, politics. And so if they don't vote, like I'm not going to be that offended. You know, there is going to be more of an engaged populace. And I think libertarians are great on that. And what we need to do also, and part of this year for me as campaigns director, I'm sorry, I'm ramble. So if you want to stop me and ask questions,
we're
let me know.
Somebody else is talking other than Ross and I.
But one thing we're going to do is definitely experimenting this year and next year on how do we take the Libertarian Party platform, which the National Libertarian eats up a lot of National Libertarian Council, all of that eats up a lot of oxygen. And that is with our internal politics. And that's the only thing that people outside the party know. Like they know we run a candidate for president, but not everyone may know that, right? Or like, and you know, and so what we need to do is take the Libertarian platform and be able to take it to people of Colorado and say, this is how it benefits you and the people of Colorado, not just on a national level. And then we can build it out from there and try and make Colorado the first state that votes for a libertarian for president or something. But we have a lot of we have a whole lot of mix of politics in Colorado. And so it's just figuring out how to connect with those people. And the best way I think partly going forward is candidates really need to know if they are going to do a run, what they're standing for. And then we just need active affiliates who can bring in volunteers to run for office. One thing I will do as campaigns director, if I am reelected, is I will work very heavily with the outreach director and fundraising directors. I do like hosting parties. Like I threw, the 50th party in the town hall. The town hall went okay because there was a giant snowstorm, but we had like 4 people show up. So I'll count that as a win when there's a giant snowstorm. But
Always a win when somebody shows up.
Right. Like I like hosting events. And I think if the 3 of us work together, we can figure out how to throw events that may not just be an economic lecture. Like, don't get me wrong. The Mises
You are now speaking my language. Oh my gosh, bullet to the brain. There's nothing I hate more than standing there with people with a drink in their hand and then everything starts talking cryptocurrency and I'm out.
Like, don't get me wrong. The Mises Institute had a lecture talk in Colorado Springs months ago, and I went down and it probably got 100 people. That's really great. Most of them are libertarians though, right? A lot of us, right? Or people who may not be affiliated, but are definitely bleeding more libertarian, So, but for people like my fiance, who she considered herself a progressive Democrat. She's really just an empathetic person. She will flow really politically with the wind with whatever she thinks is going to end up best for the people. And over the time of COVID and these last couple of years, she has seen some of her progressive friends be really crazy, where at the beginning when I was like, well, maybe the federal government shouldn't decide everything, she was like, that's insane. And now she's like, well, you sound like maybe more the reasonable person. Like she found a pamphlet in our outreach trailer that said healthcare is not a right. And she has asthma. So she was like, let's read this. I have a lot of shit to say about this. And we got into it and eventually she led to, okay, healthcare maybe isn't a right, but I think we should take care of people. And I'm like, I agree with that. Let's figure out the best way to do it. Like I am, not to get away from campaigns, but I think this all sort of ties into how our candidates can promote our ideals in the party. I am part of a group on Facebook called Liberty Memes. It's run by 2 brothers, David and Peter Gay, who are out of upstate New York. David is married to a daughter of Cuban refugees. He actually, in his early days, was a baseball player and went to Cuba to play baseball, but actually what he was doing was sneaking refugees out of the country. And he's actually banned in Cuba at this point because they found out, and if he ever goes back, they'll throw him in jail for the rest of his life. And he started Liberty Memes to promote how to do volunteerism. And eventually we started doing this $5 charity Facebook, where if you're part of the group, you donate $5 a month. And it's usually all direct charities that you can find out. So it's direct GoFundMes. We vet these people. We have been able to raise money. Like last Christmas, we raised money for a mother that she got a $5,000 medical bill for her son 3 days before Christmas. And within a week, we were able to raise enough money for her. Now we've started to shoot off of that, something that is called Liberty Memes wheelchair vans. And it started with this family,
I know about this.
Yes, because the candidate in New York running for Senate, we raised money for him.
Thomas Quitter, right?
Thomas Quitter,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he was one of the first people, and we had a GoFundMe where this person needed a wheelchair accessible van. And for whatever reason, that took off. And now we have a whole separate website. And since November, we have raised $300,000 to buy people wheelchair vans. And it's been only 1,000 people doing this, and 5,000 people promoting it. And the whole point of it is to just show people that you don't always need a government program. Sometimes it's way more meaningful to be able to go to the GoFundMe. Right now we're raising money for his name is not Legend, but we're calling him Legend because he's this 10-year-old kid whose family needs a wheelchair van. And part of the way we promote this is people make funny memes or stuff. Like we had and I will admit it, I don't know where this child is at. I think he's still in his cancer treatments for this man named George. And so we started calling him King George. And so people would sort of like dunk on LeBron James's Twitter and be like, he's the real King George. And so I've been part of that for years. And I reached out to him to come to speak at our convention and never was able to get a hold of him. One thing I am hoping now that I'm campaigns director and I'll go to Reno and meet more people is not everyone like we don't have enough connections in Colorado to always bring these people. Like I will admit, and not to get into it too heavily, but like we are bringing, like, you know, Dave Smith is coming to speak. He is one of the few people that got back to us. I reached out to Hannah Cox. I reached out to Peter and David. I reached out to tried to reach out to Justin Amash, like, and just no one got back to me because honestly, no one knows who the hell I am and I'm not important in the party. And there is a little bit of like, you need to know the right people to get a hold of someone. Like even with Dave Smith, like Karen Ann had to message him and we had to get a hold of Michael Heiss. And, you know, that's totally fine. But that is one thing, because I will try and be on the convention committee again next year. We will start doing early, trying to get speakers, because out-of-state speakers are a pain in the ass to get a hold of. And I'm happy to say that on the record. You can put that on the internet for all the libertarian celebrities and podcasters. You're a pain in the ass to get a hold of.
Actually, you know what? We should make that the headline. Yeah, you know, hey, Liberty Movement people, you're a pain in the ass to get a hold of for the Liberty Movement. Hashtag, why can't we win?
I will say Colorado does not quite get the respect it deserves among the Libertarian Party. And I mean that for everyone who's been involved, like past, present, like, you know, I mean, David Aiken is like almost single-handedly, and I could be wrong about this, but almost single-handedly got us permanent ballot access, and he runs the CRM. People don't understand how important that is.
David Aiken is a rock star. I mean,
rock star.
Right. You get me going on what one of the rock stars of the Libertarian Party, period, is David Aiken. I mean, everybody knows I am a huge David Aiken fan. I think
that man makes me feel like a boomer with technology, because he'll be like, well, let's do this. And I'm like, I don't know how. And he's like, it's easy, Jacob. It's just step 1, step 2, and step 3. And I'm like, thanks, David. Yeah. Thank you for I mean, even with campaigns, I will say, like, I've reached out to people like Kevin, reached out to people like Alan and had great conversations with them, but they're not on the board or have access like that David does. He has, I don't know if it's necessarily pulled my ass out of the fire, but like he has been great with just helping me. Like I really can't give enough thanks to David Aiken. Like even today, there are forms we need to have ready for the convention. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this today. And he's like, I already have it ready for you. I'll send you an email with this ready. And I'm like, and I'm like, what would I do without you, David? Like, he absolutely.
And he knows, like this is like his 40th rodeo, right? I mean, David is, you know, we just have to like spend a few minutes because we're like, David isn't running for anything, so we can't put him in anything. He's just there just to like help the train stay on the tracks and keep it running smoothly. But like I have a Sunday night dinner and David comes to it and I'm always asking, hey, David, why don't you tell us the history of something? And he will like tell us the history of something that is just amazing, that now like we actually know, like people who came to the Sunday night dinner one night, we all found out how we got ballot access in Colorado. And it's a very interesting story.
Yes.
And he knows everything.
And it's impressive. And like, he's a big part of getting the minor party law. And that saves us so much. I mean, New York libertarians just got kicked off of the ballot because their Senate candidate didn't get like 1% of the vote across the whole board, or some just dumb crap like that you find in very blue or very red states. Like, this is why I think Colorado has such a unique opportunity for the Libertarian Party. Is we do have, like, if you go in the Secretary of State's office, I mean, even if you run independent with no party, it's very easy to get on the ballot. Most people don't realize this, but last presidential election, 14 people ran for president in the state of Colorado.
You know, we were talking about that.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were some interesting people.
Yes.
You know?
So, and it's making alliances like, so these, I guess, sort of getting back to campaigns and elections, these are all different groups in Colorado that we need to find out how to connect with. Latinos and Hispanics. These are people who have a lot, like, not even like, I don't mean like traditional values, and a lot like we appreciate, right? Like they love their families. They're more inclined to have extended family with them than live with them than a lot of other minorities. They're hardworking people. They like how many people from South America come here and start businesses. Like it's a growing, minority in Colorado that I think if you talk to most of them would connect to libertarianism really better than they would to the Democratic Republican parties. The Native Americans in Colorado, like there's a long history with Native Americans, something I've been recently trying to explore even more. Not all of it really great, but it begs the question, like, and this is something I don't know as an American, like, what do Native American tribes want, right? Like you have some of them that do seem to be very content that, there are casinos open, there are these things, but there are a lot of Native American tribes that are not happy. And I'm from New York. We learn a lot about the Iroquois. Like we gained some political influence from the Iroquois and their federation. That was actually the inspiration for the Articles of Confederation, was the Iroquois Federation, or one of the influences on that. But I don't know even how to begin to repair that relationship. Like it's been brought up to me, and maybe this is a good start. And this is not just the Native Americans, but we abolish the House of Representatives in Colorado and we replace it with a more representative system where each town or tribe and you could break cities up then into even more, gets to vote on a representative. So you have like one representative representing 1,000 or 2,000 people, as opposed to like the district I'm a line holder in. It is cuts randomly through Golden and then has a bunch of Arvada, but doesn't include all of Arvada. And like where I live is not urban, and we include like downtown Arvada, which has started to urbanize a lot more. Like we shouldn't be represented by the same people. That's 30 minutes away. They're not, like, I don't mean to say they're not my neighbors, as in like I wouldn't get along with them. Part of the reason I love Colorado is I feel like people are so friendly here, but they're not really like my next door neighbor. Like in my neighborhood, we might vote for things a little differently than they might do in Arvada. So I don't understand why the district is built like it is. Like even with the redistricting, it made no sense. We forced this notion of we need equal population and equal this and equal that, where like cities in way back when they partitioned cities in rural land differently. And like, I don't know, like, I'm not the best to get into this, but, maybe that's a better way for even Native Americans, because then tribes can have individual representatives. They don't have to be part of some district where they are a minority, where no one may give a crap about them. And they're not going to pick a representative that is going to represent what the tribe wants, at least. And maybe they get outvoted in this new legislature, but at least they can have a representative who's on the floor, who gets to go to that microphone and gets to stand up and speak for them.
Well, actually, I think tribes sit on sovereign lands. I'm not really sure how that
works.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But can I ask you a question about?
Sure.
Because you mentioned something and it kind of perked my ears. You said I'm a line holder in my district. So are you running for an office?
Yes. Oh man. It is. Hold on. I think it's District 20. Sorry, I've been 24. I've been keeping track of so many campaigns.
Are you running for House District 20?
24. I'm
24.
Yes,
okay,
that's the co-majority whip's district. That woman is like single-handedly responsible for so much bad legislation over the past couple of years. But she's won this district pretty handily. I will admit, I am just running as a line holder. because of me doing campaigns. I plan to go to Reno. I'm also getting married in October. I don't really have the time. Thank you. I don't really have the time to run a full race. I may do it in the future. So me, like many line holders, if someone at the convention comes up and they're like, I want to take that woman out, like, go for it. I'll give you that spot.
So this brings up a question, and eventually Ross will be able to ask a question. But what is the difference as a campaigns director? I mean, you have to approach people on like, what is a line holder? Because I didn't know what a line holder was until I became a libertarian. In fact, when I heard what a line holder was, you could have like knocked my brains off the walls, because I just like blew up on that one. And I still kind of do blow up on the term line holder. That just enrages me. But libertarians are very, very, like, they love line holders. So explain the different ways you can run for office as a libertarian.
Sure. So at least in Colorado, and this is not my strategy, this is strategy that's come up with before, and I am definitely adopting it in a lot of part. So the first type of candidate we have is full run. These are people who will raise as much money as they can, like Brian Piotr, Robert Hamilton, and Scott Leva in this past race. They were all knocking on doors. They were going to as many people, spending as much money, going to debates if they can. That is obviously the ideal. The next is called educational candidates. These are candidates who are running, and this is something I might transition more to depending on how much time I have. This is someone who is running in a race where looking at the demographics, especially the political demographics, may not, like in my district where we have a co-majority whip, who the Democrats will obviously throw way more money behind her race than a lot of other races, probably don't have a huge chance of winning outside of really, I mean, unless you're a really great campaigner. But this is someone who can develop excitement for the party, who may knock on doors or answer interviews or show up at a debate, and be able to articulately and charismatically tell voters what the Libertarian Party is, what makes us different, and how to relate to those voters for us. I'm going to say this, and I'm happy to say it on a recorded line. There are a lot of people in the Libertarian Party who are very smart and know a lot of information, and I would sit and listen to for 3 hours. But most voters are not going to be able, they're not going to capture their attention. So educational candidates definitely have to be articulate and at least have a little bit of charisma. The last one is line holder. So it is probably, I imagine what you're thinking, the most controversial, which is essentially you get on the ballot, but you just don't really have to, you don't really have to do anything else. Yeah. So the way, and I will admit, when I first heard it, I was like, I don't understand, like, what is the point of running at all? So what it has been presented to me, both with statistics and talking with people, is years past, and this is specifically Colorado. We are not talking about the rest of the country because every state has different election laws. Years where we have more libertarians on the ballot, we find our membership rises more next year. So that's really why we do it. The biggest issue I have, and this is not, I'm sure every state and Libertarian Party has this, and again, something I'll be working with the outreach director, membership and fundraising director. We have 43,000 registered libertarians. And if you talk to anyone in the party, 150 people will show up at a convention, but maybe 10 or 15% of those people will ever volunteer to do anything throughout the year. We need to figure out how to change that. We need to figure out, and this is something that I know, like,
so we're still fitting 150 show up at a convention.
Okay, so that's a little bit too many, but like,
75.
But 75, right? 100. This year we have sold about 114 tickets. And I'm sure.
I thought that they were going to go to this thing. I didn't think they were actually going to go to convention.
So I mean, we obviously, not to get into too much, but we do have a bunch of different types of tickets. So some people will come to the gala. We have done some day only. We have all across. So, so maybe like, let's say a 75 to 100, and only 10 or 15% of those people. But there are, like, I went to, for example, both anti-COVID mandate rallies, and there were a couple Republican candidates who went, but the Republican Party of Denver did not go. The Republican Party of Colorado did not go. The Democratic Party of Colorado did not go. But the second convention, we showed up with an outreach. And at some point, it was just us walking around the crowd, handing out pamphlets. And honestly, like, that's what activism used to be. Like, why? And granted, I don't do this as much. Like, it is finding the time around your job. But, someone brought this up to me of standing outside where the buses are and just handing people pamphlets, or one thing we're going to try and do, and we haven't, I have to take more of the initiative on this, but last year or 2 years ago, and it didn't pan out, we were going to try and work with a bluegrass music festival and partner with them. We want to try and do that again this year, or throw some kind of a music festival or a concert, something where like you, and that way you could bring in someone like Eric July, right, who has a music band, and he doesn't have to come and talk about libertarianism. He can come and sing heavy metal music about how the government sucks. And we can bring in, or do a jam band festival with people. Like, we aren't able to do this because I just found out about this, but in Boulder, they're doing a decriminalized nature music festival. Like, why aren't we up there with it, talking to them, having an outreach trailer, being like, we support this shit, man. Like, as a Libertarian Party, our radical messaging, don't get me wrong, I can be a little bit of a troll. I have a really dark sense of humor. So sometimes there are going to be things that I don't mind a joke being made if it might be a little offensive, if it gets someone to listen who wasn't listening before. But there is a lot of radical messaging we can do as a Libertarian Party that doesn't mean it's embarrassing messaging, right? Like, now
you're speaking my language.
Like radical, like abolishing slavery was a radical message at one point, but it's the moral thing to do, right? Like, if we're not winning elections anyways, who are we going to offend if we go to a music convention and say, yeah, we support decriminalizing mushrooms. Like, we support you being allowed to put in what you want in your body, but we also support like self-responsibility. We're not advocating for a society where you see in New York City where people are strung out on heroin on the subway. Like, we want a society where if that does happen, someone's going over to that person and they're picking them up, and there's a center where they can be brought, and we're treating addiction, and people are able to do substances in their home where it's comfortable. Maybe part of this is me having been involved in the theater, but the theater has always been there's been plenty of addiction, don't get me wrong. But when I was in theater in college, it was always party as much as you want, but load in is tomorrow at 9:00 in the morning. And I expect you to be there, and I expect you to be able to perform. And what you do the night before is none of my business. And so, full disclosure, I've done, nothing really, like never done meth, heroin, things like that, but I've done my fair share of psychedelics. I do smoke pot, but I've never gotten in trouble at my jobs because I've been too high. I've never eaten acid and decide I was going to go to my cook job and try and do my job, right? Like, there is a level of self-responsibility. And I think that's one thing that frustrates me with Republicans, because you do sometimes have these social conservatives. Like, there are things I agree with. Like, I think family is important. Like, I think two parents, whether they're straight or gay, I think having two parents statistically is an important thing for children. But that being said, there are those social conservatives that are like, well, you allow drugs and everyone's just going to be strung out. Like, Laura Ingraham is this person. She comes to Denver and she's like, everywhere it smells like pot. And you're like, no, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't reek of pot everywhere in Colorado. Like, Laura Ingraham, you think people move slower here because everyone moves faster in New York. I'm from New York. We move at a different pace. People in the Midwest just don't move that fast. They're comfortable with their lives. They don't have to move 1,000,000 miles a minute.
And I just want to go on record. I don't smoke pot. Ross
That's fair.
Pot.
Right.
So 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Right. Exactly. So that's what I think Republicans are so snippy, where they're like, well, you just want everyone to do whatever and ultimate freedom. Like, yes, but we also promote it's that Spider-Man ideal, right? Like, great power comes great responsibility. Like, it's the original idea behind freedom of speech. Like, when this idea when philosophers were developing this idea, part of it was like, you have the right to say whatever you want. And even in the early days of the Republic, they were like, you should be able to lie if you want to, but you should have really a moral responsibility to tell the truth. Like, you can say whatever you want, but the ethical thing is to tell the truth. And like, this is coming from someone who lied a lot to their parents growing up. So like, it's not like I've always been great on that, but there is there is that behind it that gets mocked by the right that I think we can definitely get people on the left to agree with. Like, there are a lot of empathetic people on the left who, like even with police or things like that, they don't always know necessarily what they want or what policies are best. They just know they want a better world. And I'm happy to come to them and say, I think we have a good roadmap. Give us your trust. We haven't fucked up this country like everyone else has. How much work? Like, you really think it can be worse? Gas is like almost $7 in California right now. Like, Trump spent so much money during COVID that's partially leading to this inflation. I guarantee you the Libertarian candidate can't possibly be worse. I know we mocked Gary Johnson. I know no one cared about Joe Jorgensen, but I just can't help but feel we'd be in a better position if either one of those two had been president.
Well, actually, that's an interesting thing. But I always tell people is when people talk about the Republicans and the Democrats, my response always is, well, the one thing we know is that the Libertarians literally had nothing to do with this mess. And when people say, well, how do you know? And it's like, name a Libertarian. It's not our fault, because we may complain, but that's all we do. We have no responsibility at all, but vote us in so you can complain about how terrible we do. We will rise to that challenge.
That's why I think, it's like, we're in Arapahoe, we're going to run someone for sheriff. I think
we're going to run Scott, right?
Yes, Scott Leva for sheriff. And I think they nominated him at the Arapahoe convention last weekend. I think that's a very important race, especially sheriffs, not necessarily police, but sheriffs have a kind of, unique ability to kind of just single-handedly ignore bad federal or state laws if they want to. Like, when Ralph Northam tried to pass all those gun laws in Virginia, it was the sheriffs who went, we're not enforcing this. Like, you can pass whatever you want. I'm not putting my life on the line and going to people's houses. And I think these are unique ways for us to figure out and transition, right? Like, a lot of libertarians are against how public schools are currently run. Like, if the state is going to spend money on anything, like, I get education. I just don't like that we seem to be very, like, we can only fund one type of education. If, like, we can't give money to schools that might say, hey, we're going to give tests for students to give in, or like, we're not necessarily going to even really fund trade schools. Really, we're going to fund, schools that are really government schools, what the government dictates, no matter whether it's right or left, the state or federal government will get to dictate that. And a lot of people don't realize that federal money comes with contingencies. We'd be in a much better system if the government just handed $10,000 to a school and said, you guys figure out how to spend it, right? Or handed a teacher directly $1,000. Like, these are ways, I think, if we take over school boards, if we take over sheriffs and law enforcement, we can be the transition that people are looking for to a better system. Don't get me wrong, I have become close to an anarchist over these past couple of years, because I think people locally could figure out better ways. But if I were to do a full campaign, I'm not going to run on a campaign and be like, I want to abolish the public schools in Jefferson County, because I was part of a Jefferson County We Care About Kids when all the COVID stuff was going on. I don't know what their political persuasions are. There could have been a lot of right-wing parents in there. They still all want public school right now. We are in a society, like, a lot of people are ready to homeschool. I encourage any different type of schooling transitions, but a lot of people aren't ready to just bear the responsibility of pulling their kid out of a public school. And so we can give parents that transparency, and libertarians know, what things do and don't belong in a school, in terms of like what we are teaching kids. Like, you can have a religion class that teaches like what the religions are, but you can't preach religion in a school. You can teach history, you can teach math, you can teach this, but let parents decide how they want kids to be educated with a lot of these different values. And I think you'll have more understanding with society. Like, not to get into anything like really too crazy, but there are things in my life that have led me to meet trans people, for example, where like I'm not 100% sure where I completely stand on that issue, but I know the trans people I know personally, I will always treat with respect because they've gained my respect by being good people. Like, and I just think communities figuring out their thing may be better than a school, because like Saturday Night Live did this great skit of like, guess if this person is a voter, and this parent came out and they were like, I'm upset about a book being taught in the school. And the joke was that she was angry about the Bible being taught in school. And right-wing parents are angry about public school now, but it was the kind of more progressive, hey, we want to not be quite Bible thumping people who were the radicals who were considered the radicals before, not wanting their kids just indoctrinated. And like, I agree with that. Like, church is the place to learn religion. School is not necessarily. Like I said, I don't care about like, you have to teach how religions were started and how they've influenced the world, right? Like, I mean, especially in history, people don't always think about all these little things, but that's not the same as forcing an ideology. I'm rambling. I probably should get off this subject. I'm
you're
sorry.
fine. So, speaking of an ideology, because as campaigns director, that brings me to a question. Again, I'm sorry, Russ, I know I'm monopolizing this, but so as a campaign director, do you just kind of steer the ship and let all the people who have their philosophies, because libertarianism is a very broad thing. I mean, we have minarchists and anarchists and paleontologists, paleo-libertarians. I mean, they have all these different names. And to be honest, I have no idea where I land. I'm just
get that.
I swear to God, I don't have any idea what any of those terms mean. And when somebody says, well, you're this, I say, shut up. I am a true libertarian. I don't let anybody label me. But that being said, so do you just like steer the ship and just let them just kind of like guide them around, or do you actually help them develop, as a campaigns director, their strategy and their messaging? I mean, what is your role there?
Sure. So honestly, I have found so far since I took this over, that completely depends. There are candidates like Kevin Goldberson, like he's a longtime LP candidate or LP veteran. He's going to run for office for like the 6th or 7th time. That's a person that I just like, people like that, or like even kind of like some of the other candidates we had that are having a more fun race, like Daniel Lutz is going to run as a full candidate. He actually
Ross is running.
And Ross, like there are people who are going to have full runs that they kind of know, one, they've been in the LP so long that like they're very much know how to adopt the LP platform and know how to, convert it toward their needs for their races. The people who I have to help more are people who are running for the first time, especially who want to do more serious runs but don't know where to start. One thing I don't necessarily do, just because we have so many candidates, is I can't really be everyone's campaign manager. So one thing is people who do more full runs, and this is one thing the affiliates, can step in and help with, is getting them campaign managers. One thing I am going to do if I win is actually start a candidate committee. And really what that's just going to be doing is as many people who can volunteer, and they'll help me just keep track of candidates throughout the year. Eventually we can build a sort of political machine where this machine starts to kind of oil itself, and the campaign director can rely on, a small team in each affiliate that's really managing the campaigns, and they're giving more overview. But for right now, the state campaigns director definitely has more input than I'm sure in the Republican and Democratic Party. And also we are going to have what we call targeted races. So these are races where, based on voting history, based on demographics, based on how large the towns are, we are going to put a little bit more effort and steam behind. Like, even if my race, I was running a full race, my biggest opponent is the co-majority whip of the Democratic Party. That's going to be a hard campaign to beat. But like Aaron Lamb that I talked about, who's going to run for mayor in a race where only 200 people chose that race, that's a race we really want to target. Scott Levis, sheriff campaign, where most people don't really pay attention. Like, sheriff is one of those things that if you actually knocked on doors, you might be able to win.
Scott's a good door knocker.
Exactly. So, he also did well, on his own last election. So, and that also is nice because he has some history behind him. So, that is the other thing we need to build.
Scott lives in his community. I just want to say something about Scott, because I was at his house for, I think it was New Year's Eve party, and Scott doesn't live in like a high-rise neighborhood. When I was at his house, there were actually gunshots in his neighborhood. I mean, he actually lives where he gets it. So it's like, when anybody wants to talk about like who should be running, he is literally the guy who should be running for sheriff.
Robert Hamilton's neighborhood it's not like a rough neighborhood of Aurora, but the crime was rising. Like, there's a reason why the Republicans swept Aurora with we're going to be hard on crime message, because like we talked to a 70-year-old lady who was like, yeah, I went to bed and I woke up and someone stole all 4 tires off of my car. And this is like in a suburban neighborhood that like I grew up in New York, that we didn't have, and I wouldn't expect issues like that to occur. So, so I think races like that, there are a couple state races like Daniels who we will probably throw a little bit more behind, partially because of the redistricting. It's definitely shifting voting. I will say that's my most challenging thing. Is like, someone asked me the other day, and another board member corrected me, I was wrong, where they were like, hey, is this state Senate race up for election? And I was like, no, it's not. Turns out it is, because of the redistricting. So, there is a little bit of a learning curve. And if there's anything that I fuck up this year, I take full responsibility for that. I apologize. And I figure, if I'm reelected, that is something I will build on for next year. Brandon Work used to be a Republican
Brandon running for anything?
No, he is not, but he's going to be a lunch speaker. And what he's going to be talking about is how the Democratic political machine runs. I have been trying to go to more Republican things, and to be honest with you, I am surprised with how disorganized the Republican Party truly is. The Democratic Party, the reason they win in Colorado is, since the days of Clinton, they just built this.
Oh, they're smooth.
Yeah, this hierarchy where, if you run for a city council and someone else, and you and another Democrat get elected, but they're doing a little bit better, they're going to get boosted up to run for a better race. And that's not stupid. I don't consider that like cheating or anything. I think that's slick. I hate politics. Like, I am only involved because I just don't want to have children and 30 years to go by and for me to look in the mirror and go, my country has fallen apart, and what did I do to try and change anything? Like, people throughout history fail all the time to stop things from happening, but at least I can try. And also, I don't live in a time period where, like, if we fail, and things go bad, there's always a chance for us to get better. We still have modern medicine. We'll still have farms. This is not like the 1300s where, like, well, if I lose, that means my town is going to get raped and pillaged, and my wife is going to get taken, and I'm going to get beheaded.
Well, we're not really completely sure just yet. But let me ask you, Ross, do you have a question for Jacob?
Yep. I have a couple of questions. First is, in previous elections, in previous even year elections, we've had kind of an issue, not with people who've run before, but with newer candidates learning how Tracer works, which is the computer software that you have to use, or if you don't use it, you're not on the ballot. So I just was wondering if you had a plan, or if some kind of way to make sure people get educated on how that works.
Yes.
So they don't.
So that's kind of also kind of depending on the affiliate. Like John Hirschman in El Paso, I will say shout out to John, has done a great job of not only finding candidates, but also getting them in touch with what they're doing. One thing I have done only, and part of the reason I am running in an election is I want to gauge, like there is stuff I understand a little bit better now actually running, trying to get on the ballot. The Secretary of State, the office, I will say, is very good. For every election, they have packets. And under each subsection, there is a link to the forms that need to be filled out and explanation of how the tracer works. Most of the candidates have understood. Once the nomination process goes through and we have everyone selected, I'm going to be meeting, and I have all the information into the Secretary of State. I'm going to be having a couple Zoom sessions with all the candidates so they understand how they need to update things, even if you're not raising money, just saying I didn't raise any money. I get it. I've said to people, if you're going to be a line holder, like, and it is kind of difficult. This is kind of why you have to choose. If you are going to collect any money, you can't be a line holder because you have to be on top of reporting stuff. The only thing, excuse my language, that can really fuck you in this state is campaign finance reform. And I'm pretty sure our current Secretary of State cares a lot about this. I'll be honest with you. I don't trust her. Like, I just don't trust the secretary. She's just a very vocal Secretary of State about a lot of things. And I just don't like that. She seems a little too partisan for me. I know she talks about how secure our Colorado elections are. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little skeptical, like myself, but also, like, I know history, like, there's been voting fraud in this country since literally all of time. Like, isn't that the story of like Kansas? It's like people moved to Kansas, like when it became a state, like the first year or something, people moved to Kansas the day before the election and voted in the Kansas election or something like that. And then it led to a bunch of violence in Kansas. Like it's ridiculous. But like, like we're gonna run someone for Secretary of State, and like I think we can push them being a negual party. Anyways, I'm sorry, I may have gone off topic.
Okay. I think we're actually watching our time. So Ross,
okay.
Did you have another question?
I guess the other one was getting candidates to focus on what is important for their race. If you have any, and we don't have a ton of time left, I don't think, but I mean, an example would be for city council. Obviously, they'd be interested in stuff like, are the streets in good shape, or do we need a signal at a certain place, or
so all of that is kind of, I think, going to depend on each individual race. And that's one thing, though, especially the local candidates, they really need to know what the biggest issues are in their area. And as best they can, how they can apply party principles, but they're going to know, like Hannah, who's running in Holyoke, which is 2 hours from the Nebraska border, like 2 hours from here. I've never been to her town. I don't know what her town needs best, but her family has been there for generations, so these are the things that they can kind of build on. For certain people, what I've talked about is once they get nominated or once they make sure they're on the ballot, we're going to sit down and we're going to start developing a game plan. That's sort of with these targeted races I'm talking about. I think it's unfortunately unrealistic for the Libertarian Party to expect that we're going to win 20 or 30 of these races. I think we need to find, 6 to 10 races that we actually have a possibility and focus our effort and teeth into those. And then the other people with full runs need to be as great educational candidates as they can as well, and then we'll see what happens. And my goal for this election is I would like to get every local and county candidate elected, which would be like 6 or 7 people.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Do you have another question, Ross? Do you have any others?
I think that's the main thing. I know with my campaign though, I'm going to be focusing on choice, whether it's school choice or choice on taxes, because I mean everybody's gonna have a different opinion on that. I mean, you have some people that want to jack up taxes through the roof. They have some people no taxes. Some people say,
Ross, can I give a spoiler alert to what I know one of your campaign issues is going to be, because it happens on Sunday? Daylight savings time.
oh yeah,
Ross is going to run on abolishing it. We are taking a page out of the VEEP handbook.
I like it. And they introduced a bill in Colorado for our state to abolish it. So you could run on that with your congressional race, being like, listen, I know everyone in this state wants to get rid of it. That's what I'll take to Congress.
There we go.
That might actually be a doable congressional thing to do. Get rid of daylight savings.
We don't know anybody who likes it.
Yeah.
And on Sunday, when you lose, because we're comparing it to taxation, right, Ross? It is theft.
Yeah.
You think they gave you an hour in October, but you're wrong. They steal it back.
Well, Brian and I have been joking about coming up with a kind of weird, different campaign slogans for him to run for Senate, like random things like about like no income tax for women, like things that will make people stop and be like, interesting. And then when people ask, like, what do you mean by that? You can get into being like, well, you know, one thing that women and men pay taxes on that they shouldn't, healthcare products. Why do we tax healthcare products? Like, that's something a lot of people can get behind, you know, like random slogans that will make people, I mean, like Verdant Supreme wore a boot on his head. He got it, you know, it was a way to just get attention for the party. That's the kind of sometimes radical messaging I mean, like saying like, we support abolishing the state income tax or things like that. Like, you know, or like, we want to make sure, you know, I don't know, not pro-war. Oh my God, anti-war candidates for the LP, anti-war candidates, no pro-war candidates. I misspoke. I need to get this on record. Well, there goes my career in the Libertarian Party. It's been really nice, everybody.
Okay,
but
for the record, Jacob is not pro-war.
Not pro-war.
No libertarian.
No, in fact, I would say having been originally a Republican, maybe outside of police, that's the thing I've swung most as a libertarian on is war.
Yeah. So let's change just a little because we were running out of time, but I do want to bring up the convention because you are also on the convention committee, and Ross and I only find out about the convention through rumor and speculation. So we're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We've been trying to get the schedule out this week to everybody because I realize there's been a little bit of a failure. So with business starts at 8 a.m. Let me actually pull up this schedule in front of me here. By the way,
we found while you're doing that, we found the voter record, like from the Secretary of State, and we have been encouraging people. We've been sending out the link to people and encouraging people to please pull up your voter registration and the link and bring it with you to the convention to help move credentialing along. Because if you have that with you, you can actually help the people at the credentialing desk.
There is also a forum on our website. If you go to lpcolorado.org, at the top header, you'll see 2022 convention. There is a form in there. If you just want to come to the business and not pay for a ticket, you can fill out the form and we'll pre-credential you. Our credential chair, John Kaufman, has done a great job this year. So our goal this year is to have 90% of people who show up already credentialed, and then we can credential the last 10%. Business will start at 8 a.m. For the first half an hour, it'll mainly just be things like declaring quorum, going over the initial credentialing report, going over the agenda for the day, swearing in our timekeeper, sergeant at arms, things like that. So, you know, if people filter in that half an hour, and if I'm wrong about this, let me know. But I think if generally people filter in that half an hour, it's okay. At 8:30, we're going to do board reports, and that will go for about a half an hour, which then will hand out and explain the ballot process for national delegates. Then people will have those ballots are not due, I think, back until like right before people go to lunch or something. Once we hit 9:30, that's when we'll actually start doing voting for stuff. We'll do board seats first. I assume you guys know this already, but outreach director, secretary, legislative director, treasurer, fundraising, campaigns, and communications now are all up for
I
election.
just want to say the only two people that showed up for any of the meet the candidates was the treasurer, one treasurer, and campaigns. So we have no idea who's running. Just wanted to go on record with that. So this will be a surprise for everybody.
That is fair. Let's see. Do I know?
You know anybody who's running? We
Yeah.
don't.
So Erin King, who is a Mises Caucus member, this is pretty last minute. She is throwing her hat in the ring for fundraising director.
Erin
And
is? Oh, that'd be
yes.
awesome. Okay,
and
good.
then Jordan
Oh, gosh,
Mankiewicz.
she could have been here tonight.
Yeah, I honestly, we were both in the convention committee meeting. It's probably good one of us stayed there, honestly,
Oh.
so she could report back on anything that I missed. But Jordan Mankiewicz, I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. If not, I apologize. He's gonna run as communications director. So his qualifications, he's actually started non-for-profits and he's been a salesman for a number of years. I think he would do a really good job of actually taking on an appropriate role as communications director.
Is anybody running for secretary? Because Karen Ann Harless kind of threw us when she sent us the email that said she wasn't running. We were like, whoa.
Yes, Andy Bukovic. Again, if I'm screwing up this last name, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Andy Bukovic is going to run
That's what
for
I heard.
secretary.
Yeah, we'd heard that rumor.
Um,
We didn't want to announce it because we weren't
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, I don't. If I'm spoiling anything, I apologize,
no,
but
I mean,
I don't
yes,
think it
yeah,
really
no, it's you.
matters at
Yeah,
this
we're-
point.
yeah, we're just- yeah.
And all of this information is going to be handed out on Saturday anyway.
Well,
So
again, Saturday will be like, like an Agatha Christie novel at the very end. It's like the Butler.
the problem is, at least for some other Mises, not really a problem, but some of the other Mises people that are going to run, they did not decide they were going to run until after the deadline was to get you up on the website. So almost no one really got on those deadlines. Like the only reason I don't even know if I'm up there, the only reason I might be is because Karen Ann assumed I was rerunning, which I am going to. And then John Kaufman, who is our credentialing head, he is running for outreach director, and I think he would
okay.
do a great job.
I mean,
he
we
trains.
It's just that, like, we had like this like meet the candidates thing up for like 3 months, so anybody could have like.
I just saw most of this list like yesterday, if it makes you feel any better. So
Yeah.
I apologize.
Oh, no, not you. We knew you were running for campaigns, and
I
you're
appreciate
one of
it.
our Jeffco peeps. So
I appreciate it.
yeah. We actually didn't have you on the list because we didn't know the campaigns was running.
You're good. I actually am not sure. I will admit, I don't know if anyone else is running for campaigns. Campaigns definitely is. Yeah, campaigns is sort of like secretary. Like a secretary is an extremely important job, but honestly, it sucks. Who the hell wants to sit and have to take all the minutes and know all the rules? Like only crazy people like Karen Ann, people who like that kind of thing want to do it. I would never want to be secretary in a million years. I think there are people feel that way with campaigns. There is a level of commitment you have to be willing to take on, because without at least campaigns director who is willing to put forward the effort, even if they don't know everything, we're never going to get anywhere as a party.
You know what? We got about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
One thing I do want to ask you before we go, because libertarians are notoriously procrastinatic. Procrastinate, that's not even a word. But we know that because no one showed up for these. And so that I'm going to assume no one's probably notified you who's going to be running for a campaign. So you're probably going to get a whole bunch of people showing up at conventions saying, "Oh, I meant to call you, but I didn't. I want to run for this office."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what can those people do if they see this and they said, "Oh, yeah, that's right, I should be contacting this Jacob dude"? What can they do to help move it along so that you're not at the convention till 4 a.m. getting these people set up for their campaign?
Sure. So we're a couple things. So the first is, if you think you want to run for an office, please reach out to me either through campaigns director at lpcolorado.org or also jdluria@gmail.com. I'll throw my email out there. Honestly, sometimes it works better than campaigns. Sometimes my campaign stuff, I think, goes to spam. Definitely contact me because I will get you on my list ahead of time. Candidates, though, can be nominated on the floor. What I've sort of told the candidates showing up and what I'm going to push is, if you just want to run as a line holder, there's no reason throwing a fit and arguing over someone who's probably going to get 5% of the vote and is just there to grow membership. Those people will get 2 minutes to speak at most. If they want, we'll nominate them. Anybody who's running a more serious campaign will get about 5 minutes, with then some extra time if people want to ask for questions. I think as a party in Colorado, this is where we need to have some trust of, I've tried to do my best as campaign director of vetting a lot of these candidates, and I'm not discouraging anyone from asking questions. I want anyone to vet candidates that they want to. Candidates of people like we know, like Eric Mulder, who's been a part of this party for a long time, will do a great job. I don't really see any reason why anyone, like, if anyone is against this, step up and say something. We don't need that part. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone can trust Eric. We know he's going to be a good representation of the party. If you want to ask him questions, that's fine. But I don't see any reason anyone needs to get up and challenge him, you know?
Right, yeah, Eric, Kevin. I mean, there are certain people that we just know, right?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
There are no races where there are multiple people. So there should, right now, so there shouldn't be any debates. The last thing I'm also going to do is I have a list of all the offices. I'm going to make a bunch of copies of paperwork with all these races. There will be asterisks next to races at the convention where we already have candidates. So if you are in District 24 and you only want to be a line holder too, you don't necessarily need to run unless you want to put in a little bit more work. But if, like, we have no one running in 26, if I go there and I look at my Secretary of State and I'm like, oh, I'm in District 26, you can nominate yourself on the floor, and we will take the time to do that. I will admit, with a one-day convention, I am trying to get candidates through as quickly as I can. That's why I have spent a lot of time relying on the veterans of this party when people are running to say, hey, do you know this person? What can you tell me about this person? You know, and like Bennett Rutledge is going to run for Secretary of State. I don't know him personally, but a lot of people have great things to say about him and think he'd make a great educational candidate for that race. So I don't see any reason that he shouldn't just be nominated on the floor. You know, and I'm not trying to take any discussion away from anybody, but this is what I've told other Mises Caucus people. Like, if you have a strong opinion, I want you to voice it. But if you don't, like, we need to grow this party. We need to have candidates running, vote for the candidates. You know, we have a lot of not Mises people running. There's no reason any Mises people should be holding up non-Mises people like Ross running when we know Ross is going to be a great candidate, right? Like, there's no there's no reason to go to the convention and throw a fit that Ross is running. Like, Ross is, you know, he's chair of an affiliate. Like, that should speak volumes alone for his for his loyalty to the party. Like, we should move on. You know, I think there will be some candidates that want to run that people don't know, and will probably get vetted a little bit, and that's fine. But we're trying to adjourn at the latest by 5:30. My goal is to try and get out of there at 5 if we can. So let's do this.
Oh, yeah, let's do this. Okay, so that being said, Ross, when is the convention?
The convention is held on March 12th.
Oops. Because I didn't put that in the notes.
Business session starts at 8 o'clock, just as Jacob was saying, and the pre-registration starts at 6:30. I doubt too many people are going to be there at 6:30.
And it's going to be at Lily Fresh Farms, right?
Lily Fresh Farms.
And hopefully we will find this. We were joking about it last night. We know that Google Maps will take you not there. And
so yes, there are two ways in: a dirt road and a paved road. If you come from the north, it's paved. If you come from the south, it's not paved. These are things I've learned in doing a convention that maybe I haven't done the best of getting this information out. So I do apologize. I do want to give a shout out to Lily, who runs this convention center. She is a libertarian, and she is part of Weld County and got disgruntled, you know, didn't leave the party, but decided last year maybe she would throw a lot of Republicans, went to a couple Weld Republican meetings and went, hell no, let's get in contact with the Libertarians. Part of the reason we're doing the convention here is she is nice enough to give us this space for free. But the bigger part is actually building party infrastructure, having people in the party who have locations that we can have events and meetings in the future. And this is kind of part of that. So there is a two-pronged thought process in this. It's not just the not paying for the venue because, which we do appreciate. We're just paying her staff, but that is also it. Having getting a woman active in the convention that would be willing to lend her space to us, and that maybe we could have a headquarters in Weld County instead of her lending it out to Republicans all the time. We can take it.
We don't want that.
Exactly.
Well, this is great. I mean, and I'm looking at the time. Looks like we're about ready to close this out. Ross, anything you'd like to say?
Thanks, Jacob, for coming. I definitely
No,
learned
thank
a
you.
lot, about what's going on at the convention and the candidates and all that. So that's great.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And Ross, will Jefferson County have a booth at the convention?
We will. Yeah, we are going to have an affiliates booth. So,
So
you
please
can definitely check us out there.
Yeah, please leave
Excellent.
Ross and come to the Jefferson County booth. If you're watching this and you're a member, if you are part of Jefferson County, please come and visit it. It will probably have nobody there, but that doesn't matter. Leave your card, leave your name, and Ross will get back in touch with you. He's a sergeant at arms, so stop by and say hi to him.
Jefferson County has the most registered libertarians in the state. Let's show them why we're the best
Yeah,
affiliate in the
right.
state.
That's right. We want everybody from Jeffco to be there because Jeffco rocks. As a matter of fact, okay, spoiler alert, and this is what that I think you know this, Jacob, is that we actually are getting our, this is like big announcement. We are actually getting our own mascot. We're going to call him Jeffrey Copine. He's going to be a little porcupine.
That's awesome.
Yes,
Oh,
Eric Mulder Designs is designing him for us. So we are all excited about this.
real quick, hold on. Let me show you these. These are adorable.
Oh, okay. Oh. Da, 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 da. Anything you want to say while we wait for? I was like, wait, we've gone past our time. But that's a, oh wait, what do you got there, Jake?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find them. They're buried in my supply. If you come to the convention, I bought 3D printed porcupine toothpick holders.
Awesome.
And they're super adorable. So yeah, I just saw them on eBay and thought they were cute. So I want to get a 3D printer because I'm like, we could make a lot of cute, adorable stuff.
Alan.
This is one thing about our party. We have an adorable mascot. Everyone loves
I know,
porcupines.
right? You know, we're gonna wait when we get done with this. We'll have Eric show you our Jeffrey Copine. But we're really excited about this.
That's awesome.
Yes,
that's super cool.
Yeah, so
cool.
So we've got we got a whole launch plan for him. But that being said, we are out and
thank you so much.
Thank you.